What's up, you freaking geniuses? So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to solve quadratic equations using square roots, right? So we're going to start with some simple examples, and then we're going to end up with some stuff that you're going to probably want to give the middle finger to, all right? So first of all, let's start with something simple like this. A squared is equal to 49. Okay, so I just want to make sure you understand how to solve for a square root, all right? So if you're trying to basically get rid of this exponent, the square, all you have to do is take the square root of it. And what you do to one side of an equation, you do to the other, right? So then on this side of the equation, this radical, the square root, and the square exponent basically cancel out, and then you're just left with a. Okay, so then you get a is equal to the square root of 49, but the square root of 49, you need to make sure you understand, can be positive or negative, right? So the square root of 49, we say it's 7, right? But it can be, again, positive or negative, right? Because positive 7 times positive 7, that's 49, and negative 7 times negative 7 is also 49, right? So that's why it can be positive or negative. All right, now this is kind of like a trick question, okay? So x squared plus 20 is equal to 0, okay? So let's get rid of this 20, and in this case, we're going to subtract 20, right? And what we do to one side, we do to the other. So then on this side, these cancel out, so we're just left with x squared is equal to 0 minus 20, which is equal to negative 20, right? Negative 20. Now, to solve for x right here, again, we're going to take the square root of both sides, but if you notice something, here we're trying to take the square root of a negative number. And as you probably already know, this is totally illegal, okay? This is like trying to take a dump on the sidewalk. You can't do this. You can't take the square root of a negative number, right? So then in this case, x right here has no solution, okay? So you would literally just write x has no solution because we don't take dumps on the sidewalk. Or at least I hope you don't. All right, so here we have 2/3 u squared plus 5 is equal to 17. All right, so again, we're trying to isolate u squared right here, okay? So first of all, let's get rid of this 5 right here by subtracting 5, and we're going to subtract 5 from both sides, right? So then they cancel out right there, so then we're just left with 2/3 u squared is equal to 17 minus 5, which is equal to 12, okay? Now we need to get rid of this fraction, and the way that you do that is by multiplying by the reciprocal. Okay, so since we have 2/3 here, I'm going to multiply by 3/2. And we have to do it on both sides, right? What you do to one side, you do to the other. All right, so then on this side, these two fractions, they just cancel out. They basically just equal 1. And then we're just going to be left with u squared right here, okay, u squared. And that's equal to 12 times 3/2. So here I can reduce 12/2 down to 6/1, right? So then on top we have 6 times 3, which is 18. So then 18/1 is just 18, right? So then on this side, this is just equal to 18. Okay, now in order to solve for u right here, again, we're down to just u squared, right? So now we can take the square root of both of these sides. So here, the square root and the squared exponent cancel out. So then we're just left with u is equal to plus or minus the square root of 18, right? But the square root of 18 we can simplify, right? Let's just do it on the side over here. So the square root of 18, I can break that down into the square root of 9 times the square root of 2, right? So then here, the square root of 9, that's equal to 3. So we have 3 times the square root of 2. Okay, so u is equal to plus or minus this right here, 3 times the square root of 2. Okay, so here we have x minus 3 squared is equal to 16. All right, so we can't really just break this parentheses up or anything, right? We can't move anything. So what we have to do here is just take the square root of this entire thing. And again, what we do to one side, we do to the other, right? So then on this side, again, this square root and this squared exponent cancel out. So then we're just going to be left with x minus 3 right here, x minus 3. And that's going to be equal to, again, the plus or minus, right, the positive or negative square root of 16, which is 4, right? So then we get x minus 3 is equal to positive or negative 4. Okay, now for this type of problem, we can basically split it up into two equations. Okay, so we're going to get one that's going to be x minus 3 is equal to positive 4, right, positive 4. And then the other one's going to be x minus 3 is equal to negative 4, right, because we have two answers right here. So that's why we're splitting it up into two equations. Okay, now we're going to have two answers for x. So let's solve this one first. So to solve for x here, we just have to add 3 to both sides, right? So then we're just left with x is equal to 4 plus 3, which is 7. And then on this side, we're going to, on this side, we have to add 3 again on both sides, right? So these cancel out, and we're left with x is equal to negative 4 plus 3, which is equal to negative 1, right? So then these are your two answers. X is equal to 7, and x is equal to negative 1. Okay, now when you get two different answers, it's normally a good idea to check your answers to make sure you don't have Any extraneous solutions? Okay, so again, the original equation was x minus 3 squared is equal to 16, right? And let's just write it on both sides so we can check both of them. Okay, so on this side, we're going to plug in a 7 for x. So we're going to get 7 minus 3, which is equal to 4, right? So then we have 4 squared, which is equal to 16, right? So that checks out. Now on this side, we're going to plug in a negative 1 for x right here. So negative 1 minus 3 is equal to negative 4, right? So we're going to get negative 4 in the parentheses right there, and it's squared. So negative 4 is equal to 16 also, right? So that also checks out. Okay, so here we have p squared minus 10p plus 25 is equal to 18. Okay, so in this type of problem, you actually need to factor this first. Okay, so we can do that, or at least I can do that, and I'm going to show you how to do it. All right, so first of all, here we have p squared, so we can break that up into p times p like that. And then to figure out these numbers right here, we're just looking at the last number right here, right? So 25, so what two numbers multiply together to get 25, but they also add up to negative 10? Well, in this case, it would be negative 5 and negative 5, right? So then in this case, we're going to have a minus 5 there and a minus 5 there, okay? So we just factored that, and again, it's equal to 18, right? So equal to 18. Okay, now something nice we can do is combine these two as a square, right? So p minus 5 times p minus 5 is the same thing as p minus 5 squared. So that's how we're going to write it. We're going to write it as p minus 5 squared, okay? And then again, it's still equal to 18. All right, now we're going to solve this just like we've been solving the last ones, okay? So we're going to take the square root of this whole thing right there and the square root of this whole thing right there, all right? So then on this side, again, the square root and this exponent cancel out, so then we're just left with p minus 5 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 18. And the square root of 18, again, just like in a previous problem, we can break that up, right? Square root of 18, we can break it up into the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. And the square root of 9, again, is 3. So then here we get 3 times the square root of 2, right? So we're going to get plus or minus 3 times the square root of 2. Okay, and now I can break this up into two different equations again. All right, so then I'm going to have p minus 5 is equal to positive 3 root 2, right? So positive 3 root 2, and p minus 5 is equal to negative 3 root 2. Right? Now to solve for p over here, we're going to add 5 to both sides, right? So then these cancel out. So then we're just left with p is equal to 3 root 2 plus 5, right? 3 root 2 plus 5. Can't combine that, so that's one of your answers. And then same thing over here. We're going to add 5 to both sides, right? They cancel out right there. So then we're left with p is equal to negative 3 root 2, negative 3 root, yeah, let's keep it white, 3 root 2 plus 5. Plus 5, right? Again, can't combine these, can't simplify it anymore, so this would be your other answer. Okay, so here we have 4n squared plus 4m plus 1 is equal to 16, okay? So again, you can see we have a quadratic right here, so you want to factor it. And if you notice, this is actually a perfect square trinomial, which in case you're not sure what that is, I'll link a video to that in the card above, but an easy way of factoring these is basically just take your first term, take the square root of that, so the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of n squared is just n, and take the square root of the last term right here, so the square root of 1 is just 1, okay? And since we have two plus signs right here, plus plus, it's going to be plus 1, okay? So then to factor this, it's just going to be 2m plus 1, 2m plus 1. Okay, there's definitely other ways you can factor this. You can use the AC method, you can use guess and check, you can use whatever you want, but that's just one way you can do it kind of quickly, all right? And now this whole thing, again, is going to be equal to 16 right here. Okay, now I can multiply these together the same way I did last time, right? So 2n plus 1 times 2n plus 1 is the same thing as 2n plus 1 squared, right? So then 2n plus 1 squared is equal to 16. Okay, so now we can solve this like we've done the last few problems, right? So we're going to take the square root of that whole thing, the square root of that whole thing. So then here, these cancel out. So then we're just left with 2n plus 1 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 16, which is 4. So we're going to get plus or minus 4. So now I can split this up into two equations, right? So we're going to have 2n plus 1 is equal to positive 4, right? And we're going to have 2n plus 1 is equal to negative 4, right? So now we're just trying to solve for n, right? So then starting with this one over here, we're going to subtract 1 from both sides, okay? So then we're going to be left with 2n is equal to 4 minus 1, which is 3, right? Now to solve for n, we need to get rid of the 2 by dividing by 2, okay? So then here, these 2's cancel out. So then we're just left with n is equal to 3 over 2, or 3 halves if you're fancy. All right? Now we're going to solve this one the same way. Okay, so just trying to solve for n. So let's get rid of the 1, right? Subtract 1 from both sides. So then here they cancel out. And we're left with 2n is equal to -4 minus 1, which is equal to -5. -5. So then again, here we're going to divide both sides by 2 to get rid of that 2. So then here, these 2's cancel out. And we're left with n is equal to -5 over 2, or -5 halves if you're not fancy. So if you found the video helpful, definitely leave a thumbs up down below. And if you have any other questions or want to see any other examples, just let me know in the comment section below. Also, there's a couple playlists attached that I think you'll find helpful, so definitely check those out, and I'll see you there.